What's up guys? In this video we're going to be starting the rewiring process of the super cool custom headlights for my Mini Cooper. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to work on with the Mini are these front headlights. They are what I believe was Spider headlights originally, and there's now a whole bunch of Morimoto parts in there. Pretty high-end headlights. Super nice, I love them. But the drivers for the RGBs are eBay. One of them has a remote, and then another one uses my phone. Both of them work, except for the one with the remote. The green channel's not working on it. There's three different sets of lights in the headlight that uses RGB lighting. So because of that, I bought the Morimoto XBT, not sponsored. This has 3-channel support, so each set of lights can be their own color. It'll be really nice. Also, the wiring in here was just kind of thrown together to get it to work. Previous owner mentioned that she wanted to clean up the wiring but never did, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up. So if we look in here, over there is kind of a mess, but I mean, to this headlight, to that one is not too bad. My problem here is that these switchbacks cut out on both sides, so I need to fix that wiring. These horns, ideally, I would love to put them in the grill here. I do like the look of horns behind the grill, and I looked back there and there is room for them. I might have to make a custom bracket, which I'll maybe try to 3D print, but for now I'm gonna pull them out. They're not hooked up and they're kind of just in the way and annoying, so pull them out. I'm gonna completely pull out all the wiring, and then we're gonna clean this up a whole lot. So first, I'm gonna go ahead and take this upper part of the cowl off to expose the battery area. Alright, our next step is to remove all of this wiring as best as we can. Alright, so I know a decent amount about wiring. I just figured out how the sequential turn signal works. I'm going to wire that up a little bit better so it comes on with the car, and anytime the turn signal comes on, that does its spin thing, even if that LED is off. So like when the doors unlock and things like that, it's going to work. This is a whole mess. So we got ballasts in here, which are somewhat self-explanatory. This is probably for the headlights, which I'm assuming are LED. It is Morimoto everything, like I mentioned, but like this stuff is modified. So here's one of the things coming out of whatever the hell this is. So this is some kind of headlight relay. I mean, yeah, that's probably just a relay, but we got this kind of weird modifications, multiple things coming off this. I got to figure out what this is and what it normally does. We got wires going. This goes to the battery. This has got to be just like a regular relay adapter, but I don't know what's going on with these. We have a plug here that goes to these resistors, and I don't know what the hell these are supposed to do. And then we have wiring going through the bumper, so I got to pull the bumper off, and it's just a whole mess. I do have all the headlight wires disconnected. For the most part, I got that figured out. I do have to take the back cover off to figure out which wires go where. I could just wire it back up, but now I'm kind of curious. This has got to be like just like a HID. I mean, I know they're LED headlights, but this has got to be like an HID wiring relay. But either way, I'm going to pull the bumper off and pull that headlight out and pull that horn out and maybe call it quits there. What's up, guys? Working on the Mini again. The battery died last night, so I just finished pulling the other headlight out. The bumper's still on the car, but we're going to go ahead and take that off. As you can see, it's still in the garage. I got the FRS back today, so one thing I did not tell you guys is that it got damaged pretty bad by this tree up here. It was parked under this tree for the winter. I ended up having to make an insurance claim. It like crushed in the rear quarter. But it did like a little bit of damage all over pretty much the entire car. It was minor, but it was scattered. Kind of like really minor hail damage, like just a few things here and there. But it ended up getting pretty much the entire car repainted. So this car looks absolutely amazing now. It's completely flawless. I'm like super afraid to park in the driveway, so I'm gonna finish the Mini really quick, put that in the street. Like I don't want to leave this thing in the street either. But they fixed my shitty clear coat job. So like I said, pretty much the whole car has been repainted, including the front bumper. So the tree didn't do any damage to the front bumper, but somebody hit it last year right here, so I figured I would have that fixed while I was getting this taken care of. And then sometime over the winter, someone swung their door open into this door and put a nice crease down it. So that's been repaired as well. While they were at it, there were a few more door dings. There was like 3 door dings in this door and 1 on the side here that have all been repaired. The tree itself did a little bit of damage right here. There was a big dent right here that's been fixed. It was about probably the size of my hand, and it chipped the paint, and then a little one next to it. And there was another dent right here on the fender that's been fixed. They fixed the rock chip up here, and the bumper was peeling clear coat. That's all fixed now. So this car is absolutely flawless. The only things that weren't repainted were this door, the roof. The roof actually had no damage from the tree, believe it or not. The deck lid and the rear bumper. Everything else on the car has been repainted. So this thing looks better than when I got it, honestly. And then they detailed the inside for me too. So there's not a single ding or dent on this whole entire car now, which is pretty crazy. But anyway, we're gonna go into here and start working on the Mini. I gotta get this bumper off really quick, and then I'm gonna eat dinner. So I actually don't know how to take this bumper off. It looks like there's something holding it in place in the side here, which might be covered by this little flare piece. So I might have to pull this off of both sides. I'm not entirely sure. And then there's clips all around here. Some of them are broken, some of them are missing. So we'll get that taken care of. Another little update. I found that most of this wiring harness was hooked up incorrectly. These are resistors to try to trick the computer that there aren't aftermarket lights, but none of this was actually working. The computer in the car is throwing all sorts of codes for lights, even with this whole setup. So I'm actually gonna try to figure out how to get some of these resistors hooked up. I think I'm gonna get like a specific HID resistor to try to figure some of this out. I'm really just gonna get rid of almost all of this wiring. I'm gonna plug in the ballasts into the stock wiring and see if they power the headlights. If so, pretty much all of this is gonna go, because I don't like it. It's not clean. The DRL is gonna be wired directly to the battery so that the turn signal will always power it on and spin. And there will just be a signal wire for the turn signal and another signal wire hooked up to the parking lights for the DRL. I would like to make these parking lights and this DRL turn on with the car. I don't really want it to turn on the rear lights, the rear parking lights. There is some way to code something like this. I'm going to try to figure it out, see if I can do it with my little Bluetooth thing. That thing is pretty powerful, but we'll see. For now, I'm going to go ahead and rip this bumper off. So there's some bolts holding the bumper on underneath the splitter, and there's like 300 bolts holding this stupid splitter on. So I'm gonna leave this bumper on for now. It's gonna be easier because I have to jack up the whole front of the car like way off the ground to get this bumper off, and then take all of those bolts out. And I'll have to do that someday. I don't know, just right now I think it'll be easier. There's an access port in the fender liner. This one's worn through, so it doesn't matter. I can access it pretty easily. The other one is still intact, but the port comes off, and we'll just work at the wires from the wheel well. I'm going to take the wheel off on this side. I'll do this side, clean the wiring up, and then put the wheel back on, switch the other side. We're just going to leave the bumper on because I don't feel like jacking the whole front end of the car up and bothering with all of those bolts underneath. There's just too many of them. Yeah, so quick update. I looked underneath there a little bit more. I looked up a video of how to remove these bumpers. There are definitely like 3 clips and a couple screws that are covered by this splitter. So I would have to completely take off this splitter to get the bumper off. I'm going to be swapping out this bumper eventually, but not quite yet, and I just don't feel like spending the time doing that. So let's go ahead and pull off this wheel and continue from there. Alright, so the solder didn't want to stick because the wires were old, so I ended up using butt connectors. Now, when I do butt connectors, I do something a little bit different than, you know, your normal butt connector. I don't like my stuff to look so aftermarket, so I do take your regular type of butt connector like this, and then you take a razor and you cut around the center, and then you take pliers and you pull the shielding off, so it's just the metal piece on the butt connector, and then you go ahead and crimp just the metal piece on, and then you can cover it with heat shrink like as if you're soldering, and you get a way cleaner look here, a much more OEM and weatherproof seal. Now, as you can see, some wire is showing here, so I'll take a little dab of liquid electrical tape and put it on there just to seal that a little bit further. But typically that's how you do it. And then over here I have this connector right here, which is the same thing. I strip the shielding off and then put some heat shrink on there, and that gives you a weather tight seal so that your wiring lasts a lot longer. Alright, it's the next day and I should be going to the gym right now, but I have some motivation to work on this car, so I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. So one thing that I did is I stopped at the store and got some more heat shrink. I also got some of this. I did have this at my parents' house, but I don't feel like driving there to get it. I should have it at both locations. So I do want to just kind of advertise this really quick. It's not sponsored, but this stuff is absolutely great. So if you're doing any wiring and you mess up and you cut like some heat shrink too small, rather than having to cut it off and redo it or using actual electrical tape, you can just dab this part where the heat shrink opening is or where the exposed wire is and just cover it up really quick. And it's just a lot easier and a lot cleaner than any other method, really. So I'm going to go ahead and dab some where that exposed wire was down there, and then we're going to move on to this side of the car. Also, just as a reminder to myself, and just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and put a link to this kind of stuff in the description. Might not be this brand, but it'll be the same thing. Alright, now this wheel well is still completely intact, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this cover off. I believe it just twists. I actually don't know because I've never taken this off. That's pretty good. Very nice. I need to get a new wheel well for the other side to protect the wires over there. But for now, it's just going to go back together as is. Let's take a look here. Alright, so here's the repair on this side. I'm going to see if I need a bulb here. I might run and get one while I'm at the gym. But the repair on this side turned out a lot better. Did the same thing with just crimping. Just use butt connectors. So we have one right in here for a repair, a small piece of patch wire. And then we have another crimp right here that branches out. You know, one goes to the pigtail and then one branches out for the DRL. And then we have this set up like that. So the way that I do this is I just use, so I use two pieces of heat shrink, one small one that's small enough to go over the wire and the crimped section, and then another one that's big enough, just big enough to go over the plug a little bit and then seal on the smaller piece of heat shrink. This allows a weatherproof plug to be created without using funky colored insulators. Because I just like this, I think this looks very, very clean, pretty OEM. I mean, not OEM, but like just really clean. Anyway, let's go ahead and see if this bulb works. If not, I'm gonna go grab another one from the store. So I have one of the headlights right here. I'm not quite sure that I mentioned this, but this is just a regular HID kit in here. I guess Morimoto XB can be LED headlights or an HID bulb. There's like different versions. But either way, we're gonna go ahead and clean this whole thing up a little bit. So as you can see, the way that they made this work, well, not as you can see, I'll explain it. There's 4 wires here that don't go to anything. They might be like a leveling thing for the factory headlight. I'm not entirely sure, but these are going to get capped off because they do not do anything. Then if we look here, we have the red and the blue wire. I believe the red is the high beam and the blue is the low beam, which has come undone. Also in with the red is this brown wire right here. I believe they go to the same pin, which is this top right pin right there, and that is for the high beam. Then they have these diodes here that connect the high beam and the low beam together. This one I stripped back because this blue wire had come out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and put a new crimp on here, reconnect these, reheat shrink it. This side's okay, but I'm going to put some liquid tape on there to just kind of seal it a little bit better. And then, as you can see here, just kind of imagine that this wire right here is red. So we have the high beam that comes up here, and it goes into this diode. This prevents any electricity from going back this way through the wire. So it powers this section right here, which goes to the HID bulb. Same thing with the low beam. So when you switch between the low beam and high beam, power can't go back up through these sections of the wire down here. And when you switch between the low beam and the high beam, the HID stays powered no matter what, because the only difference between low beam and high beam with these headlights is the solenoid inside of the projector opens up to allow more light flow through. So what we need to do on here is reconnect this to this diode right here, liquid tape this to clean it up just a little bit, and then we need to remove these messy butt connectors here. This is the turn signal, and then this is the ground that was used to connect this stuff. This is the outer ring on the headlight, the white ring here, the daytime running light. I understand this is probably really confusing. It took me like a few days to kind of go through and figure out how I'm going to do this and clean everything up. I don't really expect you guys to understand everything, but this, I can tell you at least what all 4 of these wires are for. This is constant power. This red one, this black one is ground. White is the signal wire for the DRL. Yellow is the signal wire for the turn signal. So these kind of work as like relay wires. There's a controller inside of this headlight that controls that. So this is going to go to the battery. We're going to have a wire coming directly from the battery to this. This white wire is going to connect to the running lights, which is what I wired up before, the wiring that I repaired in the wheel wells. This yellow wire is going to go to the turn signal right here, and then this ground is going to go to the turn signal's ground. So these 2 wires need to be wired up over here into these butt connectors that are all messy. I'm going to rip these out and I'm going to clean up these connections. So it is still going to be wired up the same way there. It's just going to be a lot cleaner. So just to go over everything that I'm going to do, reconnect to this diode, liquid tape this, connect those 2 wires to here. The other thing that we need to do is the wires to the HID connection. They're right here. So as you can see right here, they slip out through the side and they were getting crushed. They were pinched in this seal here. So to run them out of the headlight like we're going to, I'm actually going to unplug this extension. I don't think we need this. We might, but I'm just going to go ahead and unplug it. And then this, I'm going to drill a bigger hole in here to try to fit it through here and potentially seal this. I'm going to push this through right now along with these because this should be on the inside. Drill this hole big enough to get that connector through, pull it through, and maybe cut a hole in this grommet to pull it through there as well so that this is sealed a little bit better, because right now this grommet's just sitting right here. Cut this hole a little bigger. Everything should be good, but before I do that, so I'm going to wire this stuff up like I mentioned. Then I'm going to test the headlights and make sure they work without the relay harness before I cut this hole bigger and pull that stuff through. Actually, even if they do use the relay, I'm still going to pull that through. So that's what I'm going to work on that as well. So you're going to see a whole bunch of time lapse. It's going to be both headlights. I'm going to be redoing this wiring. I'm going to be cutting this hole bigger, pulling that connector through, sealing this off, bolting everything back together. Okay, so I didn't get nearly as done as I wanted to. On this one, I did fix the... Oh, not this one. Sorry. On this one over here, I did fix the diode. I did have to step down with the heat shielding, which doesn't look as good as I would have hoped. I wonder how they... There's got to be some kind that like shrinks a lot, which is what they use over here. Misplaced my liquid tape, so I still need to touch up that spot. Otherwise, everything here was pretty smooth, soldered well, the wires were clean. Over here, the wires were a little bit more corroded because the connectors were pretty bad, so they were hard to solder. I was able to solder the ground okay, made sure it was holding well before heat shrinking. This one, I could not solder at all, so there is a butt splice in here. So that's taken care of. The other issue that I had is I couldn't drill these holes bigger. I need a Dremel. My little hole saw thing, that's the size that I need, like, doesn't center in there, and I'm just going to drill a really ugly hole if I try. So definitely need to get my Dremel out of the basement, try that out. But for now, I'm just gonna move on. I'm gonna look for my liquid tape and see if I can touch up those spots, but I gotta take off. All right, so it's later in the evening though, getting back to work on this. What I'm gonna do is actually Dremel out this hole. I'm gonna take the screws out here on this light. They're taken out on that one already. And I'm gonna use this super old Dremel that I got from my grandpa probably 10 years ago, and he's probably had this forever. It still works. And I just don't use this because I use an air grinder at my parents' house, but here I don't have an air compressor or any air tools. So using this little Dremel, we're gonna widen that hole and move on from there. Alright, so I Dremeled this into a better circle. It's not big enough yet. I still need to make it bigger. But what I need to do is find something that plugs in to this connector, which if this connector is for this bulb, then what you need is you need an H. It's an H11. So you need an H11 connector that goes to a ballast. I can just cut one from there and just plug it into this connector and use electrical tape. Either that or I could just cut off this connector and solder on one of those. But I believe that, well, I know for a fact that the bulbs in the FRS are H11 bulbs, and I cut off the end like this and I put regular spade connectors on there because that's what that headlight that's in the FRS needed, and I think I saved those connectors. So I'm gonna go inside and look for them and see if I can find them. Alright, so I got them. I found them in my basement, and they plug right into this thing perfectly. So in the words of my fiance, sometimes it pays to be a hoarder. I should have just thrown these away. I don't know why I kept them, but now I get to use them, so that's really cool. So I just need to cut. This thing's already really hacked up. Like, I hate cutting up this Morimoto relay harness because it's nice, but it's already hacked up. So I'm just gonna cut one of these plugs off that plug into a ballast, and I'm gonna wire them to one of these pigtails so that we have a plug that converts the headlight to the ballast. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep dremeling that out until one of these connectors, either this end or the other end, fits through there, so you can take it in and out if you need to. Alright, so this headlight is basically done. I have it plugged in. All the RGB stuff is over here. This guy is over here, and it doesn't work. I'm not sure, but the running light over here doesn't work anymore either. And it worked yesterday. So maybe I blew a fuse. Oh, never mind. The running light does work. It's just not inside where it's supposed to be. Okay, so I don't think I blew a fuse. Maybe this does need to work with the relay. I'm gonna go ahead and try it with the relay really quick. Okay, so I don't know what the deal is. I think there was something wrong with the ballast for a minute because I unplugged it. I tried the relay, which I'm not using right now, to be clear. The relay is not plugged in because I couldn't get that to work. It's just got this like sketchy stuff going on. I don't know what the deal is with that. I'm going to take the relay back off. Anyway, pulled this off, tested both the positive and the ground with the test light to make sure it was good. How you do that is you like put the test light on a bolt or something, plug it into the red wire, it'll light up. Then to test ground, what you do is connect it to the positive, turn on the battery, and then touch it to the ground wire, and it'll light up. So both of them are good. I plugged it in. It was making some funny noises, and I kind of just like flicked it really quick, and then it worked. So headlights on. It looks really good. If we come over here, we can mess with the brights and then see that's working. So everything is wired up correctly. So we just got to go ahead and finish that light, which I'm just going to be done for right now. I'll do that tomorrow. Hook up the DRLs and the RGB wires, but that stuff's going to be pretty easy. So we're going to have to cut the video short right here. I actually finished editing the entire video. We run into a couple snags after this point that causes the video to go almost an hour long. So we have issues with the headlights coming on, some flickering issues, also some issues with the RGBs. Most of it gets sorted out, and you will see that in the next video, which should be out next week. So you should subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so that you don't miss that. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it. That stuff helps me out a whole ton. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.